How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. In this video, we are going to talk about a game that I really like and, well, not a lot of people like, and that is Starfield. I also want to try something new with this video, so there's going to be a little bit of a discussion about the game as a whole, the engine that it was built on. We're also going to be talking about a character today. We have a full spacesuit with one of the face models. And we're also going to be doing a comparison between this character and another character model from a recent Bethesda game, the new Oblivion remaster. And we'll talk about why I want to compare those two later, so you'll have to watch the whole video for that. I'm going to leave chapters below for your convenience, so you can just jump into any section that you're interested, or if you just want to watch the whole video. With that said, let's get started.
For knowledge in the unknown. The wonder is not that the field of stars is so vast, but that we have measured it.
So, Starfield. This game, I think it was oversold, and a lot of people had a lot of expectations that weren't there. See, the Bethesda games have always been sold as open world, and I'm here to make the argument that they aren't open world. We'll have a discussion about that in a second. But yeah, among the things that were not right with this game was how you go about the decisions. This is the same thing that was happening back in Fallout 4, where your decisions pretty much don't matter. It's just you totally agree with somebody or you mildly disagree. In Starfield, at least you can side with the pirates or the UC, which it's not a big moral decision, but they are two very different factions that can make the game easier or a little bit harder depending on who you side with and how much you grind certain things. Now let's have a talk about the engine. For a while, I was in the same boat as many people who talk about Starfield and saying that Bethesda should get away from the creation engine, and because it's pretty much holding them back. It's a very outdated engine. However, there are other things that make Bethesda keep using this engine, and for this, I'm going to use a clip from somebody who likes Starfield more than I do because he made an 8-hour video about the game. So let's listen to Luke Stevens.
One of the main strengths of the creation engine is the physics simulation. The fact that you can have so many hundreds or even thousands of items placed in environments as you explore them, and each and every single one of them can be picked up or can be blown off the table with a Fus Roda shout or blasted apart with a grenade blast that goes off nearby. It makes all of their worlds feel very tactile and real. The fact that if you see a fork sitting on a table in Fallout, you can pick up that fork. It's a small detail, sure, but it does add up to making the world feel much more real. It's made up of many constituent parts, many little parts that form the broader universe you're exploring. And that is a strength that is almost entirely unique to the creation engine, and that is a unique asset they have.
So I do agree with Luke here. By the way, big fan of his channel. The link to this video is going to be in the description down below. And the reason why, even though that doesn't work for something like Starfield, I think they still went with it and they will go with it for Elder Scrolls 6 is because that is what makes a Bethesda game. One of the things that makes a Bethesda game is the fact that you can pick everything up, even if it's just junk and you're not going to do anything with it. You can pick absolutely everything in the world and just throw a bunch of stuff around. And the way that the physics works. And yes, that is what hinders this game from not having so many Go inside your ship, there's a loading screen. You go inside the dungeon, there's a loading screen. You go to another planet, there's a loading screen. And much of the travel in between worlds is being done via menus and loading screens, because when you go to the planet map and you set course and then it just takes you there. That's what it is. You just see a little animation of either you taking off or either you going through the grab jump and that's it. Here's where I'm gonna make the argument that Bethesda games are not open world games. Almost every Bethesda game that you're seeing off of late, and I'm talking about Fallout 3, Fallout 4, New Vegas, Skyrim, Oblivion, even Oblivion Remaster, they are not really open worlds. Open worlds, at least in my opinion, is a game where you can just absolutely go anywhere without any loading screen. Think of it like Cyberpunk 2077, The Witcher 3, Elden Ring. There, you just get around the world and you don't load. The only time that you get into a loading screen is if you are fast traveling. That doesn't happen on any Bethesda game. What Bethesda games have is a big level, so also called the overworld, and then you have various dungeon instances, which are smaller levels within that same world. And that goes the same for the cities. So in the case of Fallout and all those other games that are in one place, like in one big city and one big country or whatever you want to call it, that works because you can just roam around and maybe don't go into the dungeons and you never use the loading screen. Whereas in Starfield, it's different because there's basically no overworld, or if you want to look at it this way, your overworld will be when you are planet side. So you're planet side, and then you can enter into certain parts of the city without loading screen, but certain parts do require loading screen because they are those dungeons. So that is the problem with Starfield. I think if they made Starfield as like one planet that you had to do a lot of things, or maybe just have it to be one system, and then you spend a lot of time within that planet and you may have to go to another planet within that system. But the problem is going between star systems and all that. That's what creates a lot of loading screens. The compromise that I would do is I maybe on the vehicle, like I want them to continue with Starfield. I hope this IP goes on because I really like the game. And I hope there's a Starfield 2 or more DLC or something else down the line. And hopefully they can compromise in some places where there's maybe not that many physics interaction, and they can load that part of the level along with the rest of the overworld. You don't have to have a loading screen. I don't think a loading screen will ever go away from the ship part because you can customize your ship, so it needs to be loaded in that sense. There's a lot of things that go inside your ship, and that part I kind of understand why you need a loading, because their ship customization is one of the best things about the game. So I don't want the ship modification to be less just so we can have less loading screens. I want less loading screen when I'm planet side, or maybe if there is a way to do a seamless transition between planet side and space, that would be great, although I really don't see that happening with the creation engine. Again, let's hope for the future. Well, at least I would hope for the future. I know a lot of people don't want another Starfield. I do want another Starfield. Hopefully there's a Starfield 2.0 at some point. All right, now to today's model here in Blender, we have, this is the Navigator spacesuit. And underneath the helmet, I have actually a face fully with some eyelashes, some eyes, the whole shebang, just so we can take a look at all that. The only thing that I didn't import was the hair, because that's just a bunch of hair cards. We've already talked about hair cards in other videos, so there's a playlist below if you want to check that out. Okay, so as always, let's start with the geometry. And one of the things you're going to see is the topology flow for this character is amazing compared to other things that we've seen here. And now I'm getting why the Oblivion Remastered character looked the way it did, because look at this flow. Barely much triangles here. Of course, there are some in this part, but this part doesn't move or deform. But just look at the flow here in the legs, in the arms, everything, like the squares. Look at how perfect these squares are. But also look at how dense this guy is. So you can see also these. I think I may have gotten some of the gloves that are for first person, and that's why they are so dense geometry wise, because again, anything that's close to the camera should be as high as possible. Also, his face is pretty dense. I think the facial topology is pretty dense for how little you see your character in game, because your your character doesn't really have a voice in this game, and you never see him the way that you see the characters in Fallout 4 where they're actually talking to each other. So I think that's interesting that they dedicated so much detail. But we're not gonna spend too much time on the face because, like I always say, face usually comes from a base mesh. They're all very similar. The only thing is the way that the eyebrows are done for this character. Look at this very big. It's bunch of polygons. It's not just one polygon, which is surprising. But I think it was just something that came out of the mesh. And if I hide it, you can see that there is stuff underneath, because otherwise you would see empty things right here. If we go into the texture, you can see that this is just a texture with an alpha. And it goes along well. That's one of the ways that you can just do eyebrows instead of doing a bunch of hair cards all over the place like you saw with my video on Clair Obscur. They had a lot of hair cards for the eyebrows and the eyelashes. But here is just one big polygon sheet. But you do have the hair cards for the eyelashes here. There are various types of eyelashes. I just imported like the most generic one that I could find. And you can also see the topology of the eye right here. So yeah, not much about the face. I do think people might want to see the UVs for the face. So let's switch to the UVs. Okay, here in the UVs, you can see the head fully unwrapped. And one of the things that is interesting is that they took out the ears and put them in a separate UV sheet. You're also seeing here the mouth back. Remember, all these characters, any character that's going to be opening his mouth, although I don't remember any instance where this character was actually talking. Oh yeah, it's in one of the later parts. I'm not gonna say it's a spoiler, but yeah, there is a part where this character actually talks, now that I think about it. Other than that, the way that the face is unwrapped might seem a little bit familiar to you because we have seen this type of unwrapping before. There seems to be a little bit of a commonality when it comes to unwrapping the face. Also, because these faces usually have a particular topology that if you've seen all my videos, you're starting to see a pattern there when it comes to the topology of the face. There's just slight variations. And that's why I usually don't pay much attention to the body as a whole. We always look at armors and stuff. Now let's actually look at the geometry for the suit. So this suit is broken down in several pieces. Like it has the lower portion, the upper portion, sleeves, and gloves. It also has the backpack is a separate mesh because you can attach various types of backpacks. And if I unhide you can see the helmet right here. The helmet, just like the suit, has decals. So that's one of the things that they have here. They have decals, so it's easier to customize the suit. Over here, you can see this is one whole mesh, but still it has this little meshes right here. And the visor is also a separate thing. Now you can see that the topology is for the suit is not as dense as this part, I wouldn't say, but the polygons are perfect. One of the things that we should take a look at is how this thing is made of. Let's see what's together and what's separate. So if I select this whole thing and isolate it, you can see that it has thickness, but it's not a welded mesh, which we've talked about why that happens a lot in these types of meshes. But it's just not one single piece. Let's just select this whole thing and hide it. And yeah, that's completely covered. There's nothing underneath because why are you going to waste those polygons there? I do like how a lot of these spacesuits, and they do have the geometry for like the little belt buckles and stuff, and these things are not normal maps, so it's a nice resolution suit. The other thing that I like about the spacesuits in Starfield, and this is not technical but more of like a preference of design, is that these suits, they feel like actual spacesuits and not like a lot of spacesuits that you see in many sci-fi games and many sci-fi movies and shows too, where everything has to be skin tight, which if you are in outer space, unless you're some sort of a supernatural being, it will destroy you. So I think these suits do make a lot of sense for the world. All right, and aside from that, you can see all like the pipes and stuff where that you would need for breathing and for your suit to be functioning. Another thing is if I hide the backpack and the decals for the backpack, you can see that this part is visible because you do see your character if you're not wearing any backpack. Although I don't know what are you doing in this game if you're not wearing a backpack, because otherwise traversal can be painful. But look at the nice detail there in where the backpack connects. Very, I think, quite realistic for these suits right here. And yeah, like I said, I really like how they are constructed. Now you can see along every part here, there's plenty of hard surface. So things like this sort of like cage that it has, it's all hard surface. So we have plenty of triangles here and there, not deformable surfaces when your character is moving. And even if we look at the helmet, you can see how the topology is flowing. These things are perfect. I really love how their models look. So yeah, the thing that really gets my attention is how dense the gloves are. But again, also I really think I got the first person gloves, and that's why they are this way. So let's look at some UVs for the suit. So as you can see, these UVs go into a square texture. If you watched my latest video before this one, you remember that we saw some textures that were more horizontal as opposed to being square like this. And for this particular UVs, you can see that the repetition is just mirrored to the other side. There's no overlapping that I can see. So it's taken out of the 0 to 1 space. So it inherits this because there is a lot of symmetry in this suit. But you can see from the topology how perfect these polygons are, these squares all around. And everything is UV very tightly packaged. I do not think there is a UV packer that can do this good of a job. So this, like, I'm 99% sure that this had to be manual because of how everything is like packed so close together and so intentional. Look at this little happy face right here. I think it's one of these parts, but it looks like a happy face. Everything's pretty cool. And you see that the UVs are squared at some points like this. The UVs are just like cut square over there. Let's look at the torso. So what's interesting about the torso is that you don't have as many symmetrical parts. So the pieces that you have right here are pieces that are symmetrical, so they can inherit the textures from the 0 to 1 tile. But other than that, you can see that like these pipes are not on the other side. So you have to put them inside of the 0 to 1 space because they have a unique texture. Same thing with all these kind of like, I don't know, canisters that it carries. And this little inlet right here, I'd say it's an inlet probably. But look at these UVs. Look at how they are perfectly laid out, almost in a fully squared fashion, like this part right here. This is a belt. Usually belts, you just put them very straight. But other than that, you can see how beautiful the UVs are laid out all around here. And again, this is one of those examples, like, if you want to work at Bethesda, this is likely the type of UVs that you'll be expected to turn in. And when you're starting up, things like these are not easy to do to get the UVs this neat. Let's look at the gloves because those are very dense. So you can see how they are unwrapped here. And the gloves, we have the pair. And if I select here, and I just ghosted this whole thing so I can, if we select this side, you can see that there is no outside, but there is overlap. So they probably modeled one glove and just made a symmetry, used the symmetry modifier. That's probably what I would have done back when I was using 3D Studio Max, or even here in Blender, you can do so as well. Just using the symmetry modifier. So just model and UV one glove and just symmetry to the other one. It'll show up as overlapped textures, one on top of the other. Because again, there's no reason, if they're exactly the same, there's no reason to model both of them. You just model one, paint one, and just boop, symmetry. It's that easy. Another thing that's interesting about this is usually when we see gloves or hands, they're usually peeled apart and the seam is probably around here or around here. And you can see like the 5 fingers like splayed and stretched over there. You don't see that here. Each finger is unwrapped separately from the palm and this upper part of the hand. Probably because everything needs just so much detail. Again, the hand's going to be in front of the player all the time when you're in first person. All right, let's look at the helmet. Okay, here is the helmet, and you can see how everything is laid out. Everything is laid out so perfect. Even this little bits over here, everything is so intentional. You can see how these things are relaxed a little bit. The helmet does have a lot of symmetrical parts, so you can see them all around here. You can see that they mirror it outside. Usually, a question that I used to get was, can you just symmetry instead of, building the whole thing? Can you just build one side and just symmetry the other side, and that is it? When with something like this, you can do it with limbs, but you cannot do it with something that is in the middle of the body, because unless this helmet was broken apart in the middle, it wouldn't make much sense to symmetry that way. You would have some problems with seams. Not that this would be the case all the time, but I would personally not recommend it. And the visor, one of the things that we've seen in other games too is how to maximize real estate instead of doing it, completely horizontal. You just try to use as much as your square space permit, and you just stretch it this way. One of the things that you may be wondering is, why are there games that have textures that can have textures that are horizontal and some games that are square? Wouldn't it make sense that everything was horizontal so you get more space? And the answer is, it depends on the engine. For instance, in Unreal Engine, when you do the mip maps is kind of like the level of details for the texture. So in the 3D model, you have your level of details, because as the camera goes away from the 3D model, it switches to a 3D model of a lower resolution. And by resolution, I mean in polygons. So it's less dense in polygons as the camera moves away. That's what sometimes create that pop-up that you see in video games, where you see a tree that looks like a cardboard cutout, and then when you get closer, it's an actual tree. That's an LOD. Same thing happens with textures. Sometimes when you get away, there are textures that get lower and lower and lower resolution. I haven't dealt with the creation engine, but I can tell you, at least with Unreal, if you want the engine to do that for you, it needs to be a power of 2. So a texture that is like 1024 by 1024, a square texture, or like 2048 by 2048, or 4096 by 4096, which is a 4K texture. That is the reason why you have things like this, where you have some game engines that do allow for the horizontal texture and some game engines that need the square texture. I'm thinking Creation Engine may be working like Unreal Engine, but if anybody knows, if there are some modders that have mod Bethesda games before, just let me know why they use square textures as opposed to the regular offsetted texture. Okay, and in this part of the video, we are going to compare these two, because these two are Bethesda character. One is from Oblivion Remake, one is from Starfield. However, the way that this pose is realized, although at a glance, it kind of looks the same thing, but it's not the same. And the reason why I want you to look at it is because this pose that this character has here, even though they're both A pose, this is what we'll call A pose when you're creating character for rigging. The pose there is a slight difference to it. So you can see these arms are bent forward as opposed to the arms of the character from Starfield, which are a little bit more straight towards the bottom. There's also the fingers, which I found interesting. In the fingers from Starfield, have the fingers like in this position. To be fair, this is a relaxed position. When you put your hands down, this is how your hand is usually. This isn't a relaxed position. But the difference is that this character right here, because of the Oblivion remaster, it was utilizing the skeleton in the same pose as the Unreal Mannequin or even the Metahuman. It wasn't the full Metahuman skeleton because these skeletons usually have a tail for the Argonians. It's the same skeleton for everybody. These two are Bethesda models, but they are different. This one, of course, the Starfield one's not going to have a tail because it's not part of the game. But the way that the pose is made, this pose is more similar towards Unreal Engine made games. And I would say this pose is probably more default to what you would expect from a Bethesda game, which, and yes, we are going to be looking at other Bethesda games like Fallout, like Skyrim, so make sure you subscribe so you are up to date when all those videos come out. All right, everybody, that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching all the way till this point. Remember, my socials are down in the description down below. There's also some other videos for you to watch. Always ring that bell for notifications so you are notified when I post on the community tab, because that's where I'll be posting the polls to let you guys decide what will go on the next video. Again, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the